So I got this notification on my phone about a month ago to remind me that Yellowjackets Season 2 is set to return on March 24th of 2023. And I realized I haven't made a single video on the show since the Misty Quigley video in what feels like years. So I figured now would be the perfect time to make an inspection of the main characters in the show, Shauna, Taisa, and Natalie, characters that I think share a common thread, one that I think is the greater underlying theme of the show. We'll also talk about a few of the big mysteries related to them in the story. We've got spoilers on the horizon, so if you haven't seen Season 1 of Yellowjackets yet, do yourself a favor, pump the brakes, save this one for later, and come back when you're ready. By the way, if you haven't seen this show, it comes highly recommended, especially if you ever liked shows like Lost or you liked the novel Lord of the Flies. Although I would say it's better than both because neither of them have Christina Ricci in it. One thing I don't want to forget is to give a warm welcome and shout out to the new Patreon members, Nicholas Ivanovich and Ann T. Heroin. Love the name, by the way. Thank you so much for your support. You forever have my gratitude. Look for your name in the closing credits of my videos. If you too would like to help out the channel, check out my Patreon page. Link is in the description. Buckle up, buckaroo. It's time to dive. I think it's important to discuss some of the overarching themes the characters in the story deal with because it lays the groundwork for what I see going on in the story overall. To put it squarely, much of what Yellowjackets has to say relates to societal pressures and how it conflicts with what we consider to be human nature. At least that's what a lot of the subtext is screaming at me. Most of the conflict revolves around the idea that people have to hide who they are in order to survive. And we see this with just about every character in almost every relationship dynamic. No one can be completely honest. I'll go into specifics with each of the main protags, but it was very interesting to me because I noticed how almost every side character was bribed, coerced, deceived, persuaded, cajoled, bamboozled, or victim to, if not the perpetrator of, some sort of trickery. Except Kevin. Kevin was the only one who didn't trick anybody. Rest in peace to Kevin Tan's dating potential. Every character is shiesty as fuck, and I love it because it's more representative, albeit exaggeratedly so, of how real people tend to operate in the real world. Yellowjackets, whether by intention or not, reminds us that at the end of the day, society is more or less a bunch of people who are hiding who they really are so that they can get along. And there's also the survival of the species thing. So there's that. Cynical, perhaps, but the argument is strong. Another theme I picked up on is just how heavily compartmentalized the characters' personalities are, especially in the context of trauma. What I mean is, each of the girls has experiences that shape who they are today, but those experiences have no place in modern civilized society, so that one stays in the bag. When did cannibalism stop being cool? The problem for these characters is that denying who they really are ends up being a kind of torture all its own. Each of the women is trying in their own way to meet the conflict head on, or run from it, and doing so with varying degrees of success. But at the end of the day, they're all just treading water. So now for some actual character breakdown, we're gonna start with Shauna. This character is somewhat reserved, or you can say she has trouble speaking up for herself when the time is right. We see a few scenarios where Shauna struggles to stand up to her best friend Jackie, often deferring to whatever it is that Jackie wants. The relationship between the two girls is complex, to say the least. For the most part, Shauna and Jackie are tight, but being best friends with the pretty popular girl in school comes with its caveats. Jackie is portrayed as spoiled and used to being the center of her universe, while Shauna remains in her shadow, playing the role of the sidekick and cheerleader. Shauna goes along with whatever Jackie wants and even sometimes shields her from the consequences of her actions, or tries to protect Jackie from herself. Like when she tried to tell her that she needs to pull her weight around at the camp because the other girls aren't exactly happy with the slacking they're seeing. Fact that she seems completely oblivious to, by the way. Shauna is that long-suffering, tolerant friend who puts up with Jackie's nonsense because she's just that magnanimous and large-hearted. And to some extent, this is true, but Shauna's nice girl image does have some cracks in it, or shall we say secrets. Namely that she's creeping on her best friend's guy. The guilt that comes along with this no doubt plays into why she might be so willing to bend over backwards to please Jackie at times. But there is also a part of Shauna that seems to deeply resent Jackie for the same reasons. Shauna's frustrations with not being able to speak her mind constructively plays out in violent fantasies and compulsions, and actions that usually end up with someone getting cut. One of the first things we see Shauna do is straight murder a rabbit for being a nuisance in her garden, and then she serves it up as chili. But she can't tell the fam about that one because they'll think it's bonkers. But to Shauna, it makes perfect sense. This is a good example of how Shauna's true personality conflicts with who she is expected to be. When she thinks her husband is cheating on her, she doesn't confront him about it, which of course leads to her getting entangled with Adam, who is, for the record, I honestly believe Adam was just an innocent and caught a bad one. We'll get into that in the deep dive of this character after season 2. For the sake of the discussion though, let's skip to the part where she makes her final confrontation with Adam because she believes he is Glitter Boy. Okay, nobody calls him Glitter Boy, I just made that up, but it sounds good, right? Think it should be a thing. When Shauna gets mad, Shauna gets stabby. No doubt the reason her character is symbolized by the hunting knife or blades in general. The blade represents the finality of her action. This is the person that she became in the forest, and the law of the forest overrides everything else. Of course, there may be a literal connection between Shauna and her role as the resident slicer and dicer. We don't have much in the way of details on that front just yet. For a more direct expression of what is going on in Shauna's head, we can look to the cleanup scene later on. She's expressing genuine empathy for Nat, a person she does not necessarily love to be around. In that same conversation, Shauna tells Nat that she feels like all the light has been drained from the world, and that she only truly felt alive during that time back in the forest. For Shauna, what we call the real world is a facade. It's a place where we pretend, and to be honest, she's not far from the truth. Modern civilized life has Shauna feeling very detached and yearning for the days when her decisions had consequences and every moment mattered. The internal struggle between doing what is expected of her and what makes her feel whole is fully articulated in the scene. Shauna should be happy. On paper, she has everything you're supposed to want in life, but her life is an act, while the real her must remain buried or face ostracism from society. I think Shauna is going to have to make the decision to either be herself and abandon the world, or let go of the past and keep up appearances. This will play out in dramatic fashion, of course, because it is Yellowjackets. The biggest question I have about this character is, what the hell happened to that baby? I found it strange that there is no mention of the kid at any point in the current day telling of events. Shauna never makes a reference to the baby as far as I could recall, and that seems downright ominous. Some speculate the baby, well, yeah, you know. I'm not gonna say, yeah, I'm not uttering those words on YouTube for obvious reasons. I think the kid is still out there in the forest with the remaining cult members though, and is probably a full-blown cultist herself. In Yellowjackets, Taisa is painted as an alpha type personality. Now, I'm not sure I buy into the concept of alphas, but it works for now. Taisa's ambitious go-getter streak is apparent from her teenage years as a member of the Yellowjackets varsity football team, that's right, I call it football, to her present day accomplishments like becoming state senator. Taisa is the leader. Yeah, I know what the coach said about Jackie, but clearly the rest of the team looked to Taisa as the de facto leader of the group through most of the first season. And we see how this puts a strain on things between her and Jackie, the official team captain. Taisa's most notable pattern or cardinal struggle is her ambitions always end up hurting people around her. We see this with her teammate who broke her leg during practice because she was a little bit too ambitious, Van getting mauled by the wolf because she followed her out into the woods, and of course, her present-day family being subjected to visits from the bad one, an alter ego that Taisa apparently slips into during times of duress, and likely was triggered by the stresses of running her campaign and all of the skeletons being dug up as part of her vetting of the other girls. We know that the transformation, that sleepwalking thing that she did, was a thing back when they were in the woods, but it stopped after they were rescued according to her. For some reason, it's back with a vengeance. My theory is that the fight or flight response was triggered by her campaign troubles at home, and I'm guessing the stress levels were equal to what she experienced in the woods, and now the bad one is back. But what is the bad one? I also took the meaning of this dynamic to represent how Taisa's ambitions can take over and she can become someone unrecognizable. But as a story element, I think it also speaks to her connection with what wolves symbolize in Western culture, qualities such as protectiveness and relentless determination. We have yet to learn how the whole thing works, but there is an obvious connection between real wolves, the idea of the wolf, and Taisa's core personality traits. I think this persona that takes over has chosen her specifically because of that. Taisa's also got some issues with the supernatural, and we know it's related to her grandmother's passing when she saw the man with no eyes. She gets really bothered by the idea that Van believes in the supernatural, even though Taisa has had her own inexplicable and seemingly supernatural experiences. So what gives? I believe that Taisa is in denial regarding the explanation behind things being supernatural, because that shatters her idea of self-determination and agency. The idea that she has control and that her decisions are the determinant factor in the outcomes. Or maybe she just doesn't want to give into the fear that comes with believing in ghosts given the circumstances that she was in. I get the sense that it's more than that though. Her response comes off as protective and reactionary, like she's trying to avoid an uncomfortable fact. I believe this is more about what's going on inside of her than what Van believes. Whatever it is out there in those woods, it still has its hooks in Taisa, an inconvenient fact that she's probably going to have to face in season 2, especially since it looks like the culties are getting involved with the rescued escapees on the outside. Now, Nat does struggle with some of the same problems as the aforementioned, but she's different in one important way that makes her unique and really interesting. See, Nat was a punk before any of the wild stuff in the woods popped off. Why does that matter, you ask? Unlike the other kids, Natalie was already well adjusted to not fitting in, not worrying about what other people think, and being a generally principled individual. It's a kind of thing that's prerequisite to being a deliberate social outcast and being cool at the same time. Nat shoots straight, regardless of the circumstance. And yes, I am very proud of that pun. Anyway, she definitely did so when they were out there in the woods. It's a characteristic that holds from her teenage years through today. However, we do see Nat doing everything from some light finesse work to straight violence in the name of exposing what happened to Travis. That said, you could still say her response to events have always been honest and truthful. For Natalie, Travis is a North Star, a guiding light that gives her a reason to go on where she had none, and it explains why she's so desperate for answers. Finding out that Travis may have taken his own life is devastating news for her, and it's not uncommon for a reaction like this, especially when she feels that she knows Travis and that he would not do that to himself. Natalie's relationship with her parents wasn't all that great, especially with her father, who was psychologically and physically abusive to the family. That scene where she tries to defend her mom from her father is unforgettable, and a reminder that Nat comes from a very broken home, much like Travis did. This commonality is likely the thread that draws these two together and binds them. For example, we know that both Travis and Nat were struggling with drug addiction and were supporting each other in trying to get clean. One of the bigger questions I have related to this character is why didn't she and Travis work out? Why was he targeted by the cult for death, whereas she was kidnapped and not killed? I think maybe there's some unfinished business out there in the woods and Lottie is calling them all back, like it or not. Yes, I do think Misty is involved. I think somehow she's helping the cultists. Another question about Nat that bugs me is the visions that she kept having about her father, like the scene on the plane before the crash, or the scene at the kegger where she sees a vision of Misty, almost as if these forest spirit things were calling these girls well before they stepped foot in that plane. That's another thing I want to talk about if we don't get answers in season 2. I'll be making theory videos on this show right after season 2 ends because I'm sure there will be a lot to discuss. Of course, this is in addition to the deep character dives that I usually do, so if you're interested in that sort of thing, let me know in the comment section or just leave a like. Double that if you have any particular theories you'd like to see me cover post season 2. Well, that's it for this one. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be good to yourselves and to others. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one. Praise Kier, and off you go.